Here's something that should be mathematically impossible. Canada is hitting multi-decades lowest transaction volume in its major hubs, with some national indicators especially hitting its weakest points since 1995. In the same breath, home prices are sitting near all-time highs. Simultaneously, fewer people buying, higher prices. In any normal market, these two things cancel out each other. That's how supply and demand works. You learned it from grade 8, so did I. And yet, here we are. The market is frozen. The prices are absurd. The average first-time home buyers is well into the mid-30s or even 40s in major urban hubs. And if you are trying to buy a home recently, you already know that something is deeply structurally wrong. You just can't quite put your finger on what. My name is Sibo, and today we're going to do something the real estate industry, the mortgage industry, and the most financial media would genuinely prefer you not do. We're going to explain exactly what happened to this market, every domino in order with the actual numbers, so that when you make your next move, you are making it with your eyes open. Hit subscribe if you want to keep running the real mess. Let's get into it. The median existing home price right now is about $673,000. 2019, 7 years ago, it was $455,000. By the way, that's a 48% jump, not in downtown Toronto, not in Shaughnessy, Vancouver. The median price, the dead middle of the entire country. Mortgage rates are sitting around 4%, which sounds manageable until you remember that back in January 2021, you could get a 5-year fixed mortgage rate well below 2%. This is a completely different financial planet. Here's what the gap means in actual dollars. Let's demonstrate. $500,000 purchase price, 20% down, 400,000 mortgage at 1.8% interest rate. Your monthly payment is about $1,437. At today's 4%, the same loan will cost $1,902 a month. That's $465 more per month, every month for 30 years. For the same house, same carpet, same school district, reached a 6 out of 10 on the generous afternoon, same yard, the size of the general parking space, and the house itself cost $218,000 more than it did 6 years ago. So you are paying more for loan and more for the house, both at the same time. This is not bad luck, it's the output of the very specific sequence of decisions and shocks that piled on top of each other over 5 years. And once you understand the sequence, the current situation stops feeling like kiosk and starts feeling like an almost inevitable outcome. The year is 2020. The world is on fire. Most central banks of most countries, in an act of emergency financial panic, slashes rate to basically zero, injecting money into the financial system with the commitment for someone who has started a bonfire and is now slightly worried they may have used too much lighter fluid. By January 2021, the 5-year fixed mortgage hits 1.8%, the lowest interest rate in decades. People who would be sitting on the fence about buying suddenly realized that they could afford dramatically more houses for the same monthly payment. So they bought and bought and bought even more. But that was only half of the fill. COVID rewarded what Canadians needed from their homes. Suddenly, your apartment was your office, your gym, your school, your restaurant, and your primary human contact. A 700 square feet place in a city that used to feel fine suddenly felt like a sensory deprivation tank with a Wi-Fi password. Remote work exploded almost overnight, and millions of people start asking a reasonable question. If I can work from anywhere, why am I paying $2,800 a month to live somewhere I don't actually like? So they left. National home prices jumped 47.4% between March 2020 and March 2022. Not over a decade, 2 years. If you bought in 2020 or 2021, you probably made one of the best financial decisions in your life, almost entirely by accident. That's not a skill, it's timing. And for everyone who wasn't in the position of buying during that window, what happened next made everything dramatically worse. By mid-2022, inflation was running at a record high 8.1%, the highest in 40 years. So the Bank of Canada did what the central banks do. They raised the rates historically aggressively, the fastest tightening cycle in 4 decades. Mortgage rates followed in the worst possible direction. To buy a median-priced home at today's 4%, you need to earn about $143,500 a year just to qualify, and this is with minimum down payment. The median household income in Canada is $98,000. The average Canadian family is $45,500 per year, short of qualifying for the average house. Canadian home sales plummeted from a record 660,000 in 2021 down to 440,000 range recently, marking the worst stagnant 3-year stretches our housing market has seen since the mid-90s. When you adjust for population growth, market activity has flatlined entirely to 1995 level. We're currently seeing 1990s era home turnover in a country that has somehow added 12 million more people since then. So, if you sell your home and buy another one today, you are not just moving. You are voluntarily surrendering the cheapest money you will almost certainly ever access in your life and replacing it with money that costs more than twice as much on a $400,000 mortgage that the swap costs $465 more per month every month forever. The gap isn't a personal failing, it's a structural. It's baked into the math. And there are millions of families, financially solid people being told by every culture signal around them that they should own a home by now, while being quietly excluded by numbers that never appear in those signals. Here's what that actually feels like. It doesn't feel like a crisis. It feels like opening Realtor.ca for the 16th time this week and saving a house you know you cannot afford, just to have somewhere to put the feeling. It feels like watching your rent go up $150 in April and realizing your down payment timeline just got 3 months longer for a deposit you have been building for 3 years. It feels like to your best friend's housewarming party, genuinely happy for them while involuntarily calculating what their monthly payment must be. It feels like being responsible for virtually every measure and still being systematically kept out of the things your parents treated as the basic expectation of adulthood. Historically, first-time homebuyers were absolutely the backbone of the Canadian housing market, making up roughly 45% of all real estate purchases. Today, that number has crashed down to just 24%. For the first time in Canadian history, we have reached a tipping point. There are now more investors buying homes than young Canadians trying to buy their first one. The median age of a first-time home buyer is now mid-30s to 40. In early 1990s, it was 32 to 33 years old. Baby boomers now make up the wealthiest block of the real estate owners in Canada. A massive chunk of older downsizers and investors are buying entirely in cash. They're selling a detached home in Fraser Valley that they bought for just about $250,000 back in 1998, which is now worth $1.4 million. They pocketed $1 million in tax-free equity and walk into their next purchase with zero mortgage dependency. Meanwhile, the average 32 years old is trying to win a bidding war against them with a fragile bank pre-approval and just $35,000 saved in their RSP. The downstream result is devastating. Over half of young Canadians are now delaying major life milestones because of housing. According to recent data, 28% of young adults are postponing having children, and another 25% have decided to have fewer kids or none at all just to afford rent. In Vancouver, polls shows only 6% of the young people still believe they will ever own a place. The fact that an average age of a first-time homebuyer in BC is now pushing into their 40s is not a squirky data point. It's a structural crisis. It's a statistical finger point of a generation squeezed so hard for so long that defining makers of mid-class stability has been pushed from early adulthood into mid-age. And every institution with a financial stake in your buying a home has a structural incentive to tell you now it's a great time to buy. None of them will make money when you say no. Here's what almost never gets enough airtime in Canada. The housing shortage isn't just magically appeared during the 2020 pandemic. It was assembled piece by piece over 2 decades of population growth completely detaching from house starts. According to CMHC, Canada is short roughly about 3.5 housing units, and that's just the number we need to build on top of our current pace by 2030 just to restore basic affordability. For the entire 2010s, we were building houses as if our population was growing at a steady, predictable rate, entirely missing the historical immigration and the demographic boom that was coming. And what actually did get built screwed heavily towards the investor class because that's where the margins are. The true starter home, a basic townhome or a livable 3-bedroom unit for a young family was essentially disconnected as a product. Instead, developers flooded the market with 450 square feet micro condos designed for investors to rent out, not for families to live in. The modest house that was supposed to be the beginning of the wealth building ladder for working Canadians was erased from the blueprint. Then came the pandemic surge. Then the Bank of Canada raised spikes, and now crushing weight of municipal development charges and taxes, which in place like Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley can add over 100,000 to the cost of a new build before a single shovel hits the dirt. The government looked at the situation and said, cool problem, let's promise more funding. Builders are trying to fight back with pre-sale deposit structures and temporary rate buy-downs. But the hard truth is this: supply problem took 20 years of policy failure to create. It will take at least a decade to meaningfully solve. There's no policy lever the federal or provincial government can pull that builds 3.5 million homes in 2 years. The people who need to sell are financially trapped by the very low interest rate that made housing affordable 5 years ago. Everyone is stuck at opposite ends of the same problem for the complete opposite reasons, and there is no product, no policy, no executive order, and no rate cut that fix a structural imbalance this large in a single year. The era of buying any house at any price and assuming appreciation bails you out is over. Running the real numbers before you sign is not a pessimism. It's the only same way to navigate a market that expensive and this broken. You are not crazy for looking at listings and think none of these adds up. It generally doesn't, and understanding exactly how it doesn't. That's the first step towards making a decision that actually works for you instead of just participating in collective financial insanity because everyone around you insists that buying is always the right move. Now you do. Drop a like if this helped. It genuinely makes a difference. Subscribe if you want to keep running the real math together, and because you stay until the end, I have something special for you. I have put together a free first-time home buyer's guide that covers everything we discussed today and much more. You can download it for free by using the link in the description below. Even better, for a limited time, I'm offering a free no-obligation one-on-one consultation to the first 5 people who sign up every week. We will sit down, discuss your personal goals, and create custom roadmap for your home buying journey, in person or via Zoom meeting, whatever convenient to you. Click the second link in the description below to book your spot before they're all gone. And I will see you in the next one.